interviewing is fundamentally critical to everything that you do as an engineer, whether you're working on a project internally with a company or certainly externally with a company. It's even more difficult because you're not a member of that organization. You're kind of parachuting in, if you will, and the interview forms the entire basis of what you proceed to do after that.
In my position as a realtor, I have found that the most important part of what I do is the interview process, and that is when I am speaking with prospective clients on the telephone or whether it be in person, and finding out what their needs are as far as in the next home that they purchased, what their wants are, what their desires are. It's very important that I ask lots of questions and then be quiet and listen.
In public health sciences, interviewing is used in a number of ways. Clinicians, people that work in the medical field in the clinical setting, will use interview skills to find out what's going on with the patient so that they can best determine what treatment to offer. They may also speak with a patient's family members or significant other to find out what's going on with them.
You have to show that person that you truly are interested in what they're saying, because because people who are knowledgeable about something, they want to find somebody to impress with their knowledge, and you show that you're interested, and they will say, well, this is my story, this is my life, this is an opportunity to share what I know with somebody, and they seem to be interested in that.
An open-ended question will sometimes pull the buyer into a deeper conversation so that they will share with you more of their life and what they really are looking for.
Health educators, people who work in health behavior, health promotion, may use interview techniques to get to know more about their clientele that they work with, to help them change their behavior, to engage in more healthy behaviors. And other people in public health sciences, for instance epidemiologists, may use interviews to help them develop surveying.
The key in all of the different types of interviewing is to research, know what you're going to be talking about, know who the person is, and then, after you've asked the question, listen.
Welcome to Clemson University's Advanced Writing Program. I'm Mike Pulley, and in this tutorial we will teach you about a highly important skill used in the business and technical fields: how to conduct problem-solving interviews. These interviews are designed to obtain important, needed information from someone for the purpose of solving a particular on-the-job problem. Professionals in many fields conduct these interviews, often on a routine basis. Your ability to use this highly important problem-solving skill can play a vital role in your career and in the success of your company or organization. We'll teach you this skill by following the process of a good problem-solving interview, starting in the beginning and carrying through to completion. Let's see how it's done. The process of conducting a problem-solving interview often begins here, in the library. In order to conduct a good interview and ask good questions, you should learn everything you can in advance about your subject. It's also helpful to learn what you can about the person you will be interviewing. For example, if your interviewee is a published author, it's instructive to read some of the author's published writings. Seeking additional information in library databases and other online sources can also be highly useful. The bottom line is that the more you know about the subject, generally the better you will be at coming up with effective questions and coming away with the information needed to solve your particular problem. Once you've completed your research, you should write down the main purpose of your interview to guide your approach. For example, I will interview Dan Howell to learn how he calibrates coin-operated weight machines in supermarkets so that I can write up training instructions for this task. With your purpose in mind, it's time to prepare an initial list of questions that you will bring to the interview. Generally, the questions on your list will fall into 3 categories: open-ended questions, fill-in questions, and yes-no questions. Let's take them one at a time. Open-ended questions are the real pillars of the interview process. They are open-ended because they invite the interviewee to open up, to talk at length about a particular subject, to elaborate in detail. They are especially useful for the beginning and early stages of the interview. How do you perform maintenance on one of these machines?
Well, the first thing you do is to open the back of the machine. You want to check the calibration on it. So I'll open the back of the machine. It has a test mode. We're going to put it in test mode. And now it comes up with an RC count. The RC count on this particular machine is set at 400.
Open-ended questions do not need to be in the form of an actual question. Often a gentle command or a simple statement will provoke the interviewee into giving an extended answer. Consider, tell me how the use of the internet helped your organization. Please describe for me the characteristics of a good salesperson. I'm curious about your company's training procedures. I was wondering how you came up with your new invention. Fill-in questions ask for quite specific information you need to know about your topic. The interviewee will probably answer some of these during the course of the interview. Keep track of which ones are answered and ask the remaining ones before the close of your interview. What is a biofuel?
Biofuel, I guess, specifically refers to a fuel that is renewable and is typically plant, or even it can be animal-based.
Use yes-no questions only when absolutely necessary because they produce such limited responses from interviewees. Avoid using loaded or biased questions. Remain impartial. Instead of, wouldn't you agree that nuclear power plants in the U.S. are not safe? Say, can you talk about the safety of the nuclear industry and how well reactors meet safety requirements?
So in other words, if you want a very natural response about someone's experience, or their thoughts or their beliefs or their attitudes about something, you have to be very careful how you word certain questions so that you don't lead them in one direction or another and influence the things that they may say.
Now that you've completed your list of questions, it's time to set up the interview. Contact the prospective interviewee. Explain who you are, why you would like to interview them, and how much time you think it would take to conduct the interview. If your interviewee has a limited amount of time for the initial interview, you can deal with this by setting up a second interview at a later date, either in person or over the phone, to cover items you were unable to get to in the first interview. If you hope to tape record the interview or quote your interviewee in published sources, gain permission. Now it's time to conduct the actual interview. Dress appropriately and be on time. Engaging in a little chit-chat or socializing during the initial meeting can help establish a more intimate, cordial atmosphere during the interview. If you are meeting the interviewee at their home or office, look for some interesting item to ask them about. Say a special award hanging on the wall, or a photograph of the interviewee with a famous person. If you tape record the interview, force yourself to take detailed notes anyway, in case your tape recorder fails during the interview. Rather than a list of long, detailed questions, bring note cards to the interview with keywords and phrases to jog your memory of the questions you want to ask. When you conduct the interview, be objective. Don't offer your opinions on the subject. You are there to get information, not to debate. Let the interviewee be the expert. Let them do the talking.
Listen. Don't start your next question before they've finished answering the first one.
Be polite but persistent. Your goal is to obtain useful information, so don't be afraid to ask sensitive questions if necessary. However, you might want to save the sensitive questions for the end of the interview. Stay on track. If the conversation wanders, ask a specific question to get the interviewee back on the topic. So what part of the operation do we have here, Polly?
Okay, well, we've already done our biodiesel conversion outside in the main reactor, and we're going to test for conversion. So here is what happens after you do the process outside.
Nonverbal communication is an important factor in interviews. Show your interest by using appropriate body language. Eye contact and nodding is good. Avoid appearing impatient. The use of silence is especially powerful.
And silence is very uncomfortable when you first begin to use that in interviews. But when you get used to just allowing yourself to stop talking, allowing the person to stop talking, and just sit there for a minute, oftentimes the participant will begin talking again. And so, especially if you can see that an informant or a participant is really thinking about something, just being really comfortable with giving them the time that they need to process their thoughts so that they can give you the information that you're looking for.
Now let's talk about a very important tool to use during the interview, the follow-up question. Some answers prompt additional questions. Ask them as they arise. Interviewees often provide general, vague answers to questions because they are unaware of what level of detail and specificity is being sought by the interviewer. Tell me more about that, you might want to say, or can you elaborate on that?
So this one, we actually put it in the refrigerator. We keep it cool. So I'm going to stick it in our refrigerator.
What happens if you don't keep it cool? What would be the problem with that?
Oftentimes when somebody is responding to a question, they will say something that will trigger another question that you haven't even put down. You say, aha, boy, now that sounds like an interesting way to turn the interview and go in this direction. And then again, when that is played out, you can get back to your other questions that you have prepared ahead of time.
If you are uncertain about an answer, or if you do not understand an answer, use a paraphrase question to get your interviewee to repeat the answer in more detail or with more clarity. So, if I understand you correctly, you check the serial number and then make sure you have the corresponding key
for this machine
to go with that machine.
Right.
It's always good to end your interview with these two very important questions. The first could be called an anything else question. Can you think of any other important issues we haven't covered today? I've covered all my questions. Is there anything else I haven't asked you about that you think that's important to cover or bring up? The second question to use at the end is designed to seek other possible contacts for follow-up research. Always ask your source, who else would you recommend that I talk to on this subject? I'm interested in talking to other experts, say in the area on biofuels. Who would you recommend I talk to? Other experts?
Particularly my boss here, Dr. Terry Walker in Biological Systems Engineering.
Of course, thank the interviewee before you leave. And ask permission to call after the fact to clarify any additional points or ask more questions that arise during the writing process. Immediately after the interview, review your notes and add in many additional details fresh in your memory. If you postpone this step, you will begin to forget many of these important particulars. As soon as possible, type your notes up into complete sentences. This is important because as time elapses, you may have trouble deciphering your brief handwritten notations in scribbled shorthand. A day or two after the interview, thank the interviewee in a brief letter or email. Letters sent through old-fashioned snail mail are better because they will stand out and make more of an impression. Making an impression is important because you might need to turn to your interviewee for help on future projects. While this tutorial has focused on face-to-face interviews, time and travel constraints require that many workplace interviews be conducted over the telephone. Here are a few important tips specific to telephone interviewing. Make your questions short and to the point, because complicated questions are difficult to understand over the phone. Be especially cautious when writing down answers, because it's much easier to misunderstand someone over the phone. Smile when you're talking on the phone, and it will come through in your voice. Now you're ready to go to work. If you follow the tips in this tutorial and practice the craft of problem-solving interviewing, you will become a good practitioner of primary research.
As far as I'm concerned, the interviewing process is absolutely critical to creating an environment where creativity and fresh ideas can thrive.
The most important part of what I do is the interview process, gathering information on my prospective buyer's needs.
It's not only important in your work, in your day-to-day work, but these techniques cut across so many different sub-disciplines in public health, and they're very valuable in just day-to-day interactions with other people in your social network or in your family and even with your coworkers. So it's really all about basic communication skills.
By golly, when you listen to people who are expert in many things, you become more knowledgeable, and you're able to enjoy the world even more.